Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Stonebelt ARC's webinar, People with Disabilities in Congregational Leadership, Lessons Learned. Today we have our two guests are Reverend Lisa Heffernan and Reverend Lisa McKee. I'll be naming them by last name so you know who's who. These are two of my good friends, and I'm so blessed that they can be here today. We will meet them here shortly to give you all a little bit of a rundown of who Stonebelt is, in case you don't know who we are. Stonebelt ARC is a nonprofit service provider that provides services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and a large array of different support services. We are also, we aim to be community-based. We are a secular organization, but we support people of any and all faith traditions and spiritual practices. We are located in South Central Indiana. We have kind of hubs in Bloomington, Bedford, and Columbus, Indiana. We are, like I said, we are a community-based organization, so we promote full integration and inclusion of people with disabilities in their community to achieve belonging as much as possible. I will post in the chat here in a few minutes a link so that you all can donate. These webinars are free and we want to maintain them to be free and accessible to you all. But we do offer a slight donation to our speakers. So we do ask for your any monetary gift you might be able to give, and I'll drop that link into the chat box here in a moment. We do webinars. We aim to do webinars every year. I've been trying to do about 5 webinars a year. This is our 3rd, and we have 2 more. We have one in September. I am actually going to be the speaker for that. You all get to hear some of the things that I've been working on regarding my dissertation. I promise I will try to make it not boring for you all. But we will specifically be talking about the barrier of transportation for people with intellectual developmental disabilities, and how transportation is one of the biggest barriers to belonging and full participation in their community. And so we'll talk about some of those various factors, why that is, and then some things that I encourage you as faith communities, service providers, clergy, and so on, as far as ways that you all can help break down this barrier. And then in November, I don't know who our speakers are going to be yet. I will be listening to stories of people right here in the Stonebelt community and learning about their stories of belonging. And I will bring a select few on to share their stories of belonging and how they have how they do belong in their community, and those kind of success stories, if you will. All of our past webinars are available on our website, www.stonebelt.org/spiritual-support. And I will put that in the chat box here in a moment as well. Okay. This, like I said, so this webinar will be recorded and available on that website and our YouTube. So feel free to come back, check it out later, or share this with somebody else. Okay, so just some regular Zoom instructions. I know each time we hop on here, there's slightly different settings depending on the host. Today I have you all muted, and your cameras are off, all of you participants. You can use the chat. In fact, I welcome you to use the chat icon. And put your name, introduce yourself, say why you're here, what you do, all of that. Use it as a networking tool if you so choose, or for internal discussion as a group. And then you can also use the Q&A box. We will aim to do the Q&A at the end, just so that we can make sure our speakers have a good amount of time and can organize their thoughts. So but please use that Q&A box to insert any questions that you have along the way. You don't have to wait to type that in until the end. You can go ahead and submit those as they come up in your head, and we'll just discuss them at the end. And then lastly, closed captioning is available. So you can turn the closed captioning on or off. So if it's disruptive, you can turn it off. But if you want to utilize it, you can turn that on. For those who need to share their questions orally, where typing is not accessible, what you can do is you can notify me. You should be able to raise your hand, use the raise hand icon, or you can put it in the Q&A that you have a question, or in the chat, and I will turn on your mic so you can orally ask your question as well. Okay. All right, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers. One of our speakers is Reverend Lisa McKee. She is an ordained elder within the United Methodist Church. She is currently the coordinator of residential life at Reality Ministries in Durham, North Carolina. She received her Master's of Divinity at Wesley Theological Seminary in 1996. She's earned her MA in rehab counseling and also an MA in Parks and Recreation admin with a focus on therapeutic recreation. She is also currently working on her Doctor of Ministry in Disability and Ministry Studies at Western Theological Seminary. You will all see a theme. The three of us, Lisa McKee, Lisa Heffernan, and I are all in that same cohort at Western Theological Seminary working on our doctorate of ministry. That is one of the reasons how we came to know each other. Reverend Lisa McKee is also a lifelong disability advocate with a wide range of education and work in the disability field, as well as lived experience of disability. She is committed to the vital and diversity and belonging bring to communities, and is very passionate about creating spaces where those voices are typically dismissed. She wants to make sure that they are fully heard. And our second speaker is Reverend Lisa Heffernan. Reverend Heffernan is an ordained Lutheran ELCA pastor. She is serving part-time positions, multiple part-time positions. The one is with Lumen. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Reverend Heffernan. It's a Lutheran campus group. She's also a pastor at Lutheran Center at University of South Dakota. And she is also the coordinator of the Lutheran ELCA Disability Ministries. So if you're on this call and you are Lutheran and you may have just found out that your denomination actually has a disability ministries a team, resource group, and you can contact Lisa Heffernan as well. She lives with spinal bifida and is a wheelchair user. She has earned her MDiv, so Master's of Divinity, at Wartburg, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Wartburg Theological Seminary, and she earned that in 2013. She is also currently working on earning her doctorate of ministry in disability and ministry studies at Western Theological Seminary. Without further ado, Reverend Heffernan, you're going to take it away and share with us what you have for us today. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen here with you all in just a second. Thanks, Sarah, for the introduction, and it's great to be here this afternoon. So today I'm going to focus a bit on interdependence and things I am learning and have learned as a leader who lives with a disability. And I'm coming from the perspective of being in the parish for 7.5 years before taking my call with the Luther Center campus ministry at the University of South Dakota and working with disability ministries with the ELCA. So it's disabled leadership and interdependence and what I'm learning. Let's see here. So as I think about what I've experienced so far as being a leader in this church, I'm thinking about the dictionary definition, so to speak, of interdependence versus how that word has come to mean something a little bit different for me in my work. So that original definition is the dependence of two or more people or things on each other. How I'm thinking about it today is how a community grows and serves together in the name of Christ, and how thinking of interdependence in this way has shaped me as a leader, is shaping me every day, and has shaped my previous congregation and even the folks I work with now as leaders themselves. You'll notice a few cheeky titles to my slides as well, to a few of them. And I wanted to start at the beginning. So you'll see a few places where I felt interdependence was very important for me as a disabled leader coming into serving in the church. And it starts at the beginning, at interviewing. And for me, the importance of transparency was of the utmost. I wanted to be open, not sharing every little single detail about the ins and outs of my embodiment, my disability, but just saying, not going to have an elephant in the room here, I use a wheelchair. And that might change or make adaptations to the role of pastor. So for me, asking, what are the expectations of my role? What are those day-to-day realities that I'm going to be facing in leadership and that we'll be dealing with together? One example I always go back to, and I laugh about it now, but when I was learning about the congregation, I asked either the Altar Guild ladies or the council very early on, maybe that first week, so who hangs the banners on Sundays? Thinking, probably the Altar Guild or a specific team of people, and they go, oh, the pastor does that. Well, this pastor can't do that. She is 4'6" if she were not in a wheelchair, and about 4 foot sitting in a wheelchair. Let's figure out how to make this work. And throughout my time there, it was trial and error. Sometimes my confirmation students would do it, not too often, but we worked together to make a plan for the Altar Guild and spouses of theirs to help. And we just found out in our life together that learning from the beginning, there were just some things we might run into that we had to figure out. And for me, a big thing was asking them, what and who do they value in their community? My first congregation has some members who are part of something similar to Stone Belt. And I really wanted to know what that relationship looked like and what their relationship with the community was. Who are they valuing? Are they putting a high value on the people on the margins, like those who have disabilities, and how can my lived experience maybe offer some help there. And then I wanted to know about their purpose and mission in their community as a part of that. All of this transparency helped us start off, I think, well. Hiccups along the way, but that happens in every call with every person. But it helped us start off really well. In those same interviews, in those early days, thinking about spaces and the sanctuary. What does that space look like? And I had to think about what adaptations to offer as ideas for them to make changes about that could help me fulfill my role as pastor. Some places in interviews in the past said to me, well, here's what we plan to do. We can put a ramp here. We can change this kind of door. We can do this. And I said, no. Please wait till I come and let us do this together. In a way of me saying a little more softly, I know what I need. And I have ideas too. You don't need to try to do it all before I'm here. And I just want it to work, whatever those changes might be. Because if something's too tall, too narrow, I don't get to fulfill that role as pastor. And I think that ties in with interdependence as well. They are willing to make those adaptations so that I can serve. But also, and I have a bit further down on my slide, but also it created a renewed energy for our elderly folks and some of our disabled members. It encouraged them to participate in ways they maybe hadn't been able to in a very long time, by making even a simple ramp happen in a sanctuary. I think it's important to learn your resources together. Who are your contractors? Who are your people in your congregation that do construction and woodworking? And dealing with the reality of pushback. I remember hearing some scuttlebutt later, way after the fact, of people saying, well, when Pastor Lisa leaves, we can put this all back to the way it was, right? No, because it helps the community live into the fullness of who they are by opening it up to more people. And that sort of spoke to this idea of, is our sanctuary, is our church pretty? Or is it functional, or both? Because I'd argue that there is beauty in accessibility and functionality. I think it's also important to learn about the traditions of the place that you're in. What are their practices? What's important for them and why? You know, in my experience, it was maybe starting table style for communion, where everybody comes up in a line and the pastor walks along the line and serves one of the elements. Well, that's challenging for me as a wheelchair user. So kind of shaking things up and serving communion in a different way, and how doing that can be a beautiful thing as well. And brainstorming with those folks to find ways that I can still be in that role and our servers can still fulfill their roles while we share this sacrament with the community. The big challenge for myself, and I'm guessing for a lot of other leaders, clergy, or lay with disability, might be visitation. That can be especially hard because obviously I'm not going to jump a bunch of steps to get into somebody's house. But I do have some handy dandy metal ramps that are in the back of my van that a person who meets me at a church member's house can install for me, put up for that hour or so that I'm visiting, and put right back in my car. We're working together to serve the people by doing that. I will admit I was not successful with this in my first call as much as I wanted to be. Part of that was me going back to my stubborn, independent attitude of, I'm the pastor. I have to do this myself. Even when I had congregation members say, we can come up with a crew to make this happen. But still, me being stubborn as I am, but also hearing some attitudes of, no, that's the pastor's job to figure it out. And then also the challenges of it's being hard for people to speak up when they want to visit. And so having a transparency of what are the congregation's needs, having accountability for me, and working together with a team is something I would have changed, and something I think about, even though my current positions aren't so much home visits, I still have to think about accessibility and meeting my people where they're at. My current call, they made some changes in the Luther Center so I could serve well and be there for my students. But I do have to think about coffee shops in the community, accessible parking, and accessibility of events at college. So how do I get creative? Who are the mutual supports I have to be a better campus pastor to those students? And really every situation and every place is going to be different as you think about visiting your people and having it happen so you as the leader with a disability can do that with the aid and support of your lay leaders. These are just some examples, a few things of what any other disabled leader might think about, especially if they're serving in a church as pastor, lay leader, whatever their role may be, or even as an ally pastor, a non-disabled ally pastor, so that they can provide support to another leader in their community or to lay leaders in their congregations who have disabilities that are called to serve in different ways too. I think a lot of these things are translatable across the board. And, finally, I think it's useful to congregational leaders and congregations who may in the future be served by a leader who has a disability. You have to think about how you are called. Like I said, with interviewing, what does that look like? How to open your spaces up so that the community can access your ministry, how they can come to the table and meet Jesus and hear the gospel. Meeting with needs outside your walls. These matter. And here's why. There's interdependence, there's community, being the body of Christ. Leaders can't do the work of the church alone. We're meant to live in community and to live and minister together using everyone's gifts. I didn't include it here explicitly, but one of my favorite pieces of scripture is 1 Corinthians chapter 12 with the body of Christ and how we need one another to be that body. We are meant to do life together. And I think interdependence helps us recognize that leadership does not mean that there's only one way to be a leader. I should say it that way. Every leader, lay, clergy, in the church, out of the church, we're going to have all different sets of physical, mental, emotional gifts and abilities, and they all have value. Disabled leader, pastor of any kind can find ways with the community to live into their role as they are. That was probably and continues to be the hardest learning for me. Admittedly, facing some burnout and still at times feeling like I have to do it all. And having friends and colleagues now reminding me that being who you are in leadership, embodied as you are, disabled, whatever, being who you are as a leader, can serve as a model for other disabled people, for other people, all people who want to pursue leadership. And that affects modeling leadership across the board. It only gives people the freedom to say, I need help getting up these steps. I need help hanging up this banner. But I can lead. I can preach a sermon. I can administer the sacraments. I can minister to God's people. But let's get rid of these boundaries. You don't have to make everything up for me. I don't have to do it all myself. But God calls us to do it together. That's interdependence for me as a disabled church leader. And this kind of sums up what I've just said. But I do want to point out, traditions are beautiful. But so is creating new traditions. Like, as I said, brings more people to God's table. Your worth as a leader, and this is the hard one for me, isn't dependent on whether or not you can hang that banner. God's called us to be diverse and beautiful, made for unconditional love and service. And one thing I really try to remind myself and remind people I talk to all the time is something that I learned in our demon cohort that I kind of thought about, but it didn't really hit me until we all came together, is that disability is not a bad word. We're not broken. The world disables us when things are not accessible. But for people who don't think that way, who aren't wired to think of that right away, it can be a scary idea. And change is scary for everybody. But some things to think about alongside that is, what happens if a church doesn't change? And what happens when we view disability as not lacking, but simply another way of being? I'm not going to give answers for that because I'm still thinking about that. I have some thoughts on it, and I hope you hear those as thoughts, but I haven't got it figured out yet. We need the community to figure that out. And as I wrap up my piece, I will add that I am very thankful for these two women who have journeyed along with me as we're all figuring out this stuff. So, thanks.
Thank you so much, Reverend Heffernan. I am now going to, if you want to stop share.
There we go.
And yay. Okay. So now Reverend McKee is going to share a little bit more story style, some of her experiences in a relatively new ministry for you. Which is really exciting, but she's learning there's some things that she's got to still explore and learn. But that's kind of what we're all doing, right? We're all continuing to learn and grow in different ways that God is challenging us. McKee, Reverend McKee, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for Heffernan and Sarah, and I'm just blessed to be here with them and honored to be with all of you. I'd like to affirm much of what Heffernan said. I served in congregational leadership for 13 years, and so I really resonated with a lot of what you said, and I'm still thinking and learning about that. So I'm hearing a message pop up. I'm seeing a message pop up, so I'm going to let people know that I do not have slides. So
I think this question was more on, so yes, Reverend McKee does not have slides.
Okay.
She'll be sharing a story with you. All of Reverend Heffernan's slides will come to you all, as well as my beginning intro slides. They'll be merged and they'll come to you all as a PDF once this webinar is complete. Just give me a few days and I'll send that all to you. You got it.
Okay. So, as Sarah was saying, a year ago this past week, I began a new position as residential life coordinator at Reality Ministries in Durham, North Carolina. And it's hard to believe that I have only been here a year, and in some ways it seems like just a moment as well. But so I'm going to tell you a story about what I've been doing this year, but I'm going to give you 5 things before I start. I'm going to give you 5 things that I want you to draw from what I'm telling you. So these are my conclusions, and so if you might put these in the chat for everyone to reflect on. Thanks for that. One thing I learned that is that no matter how much experience you have, how much knowledge you have, relational capital is necessary to make change and introduce new things. Relationships are fundamental to accommodation, to program change, to allowing people to display their leadership skills, discover their leadership gifts, and that takes time. So, and the second thing related to that would be that no matter what your agenda is, be ready to drop it. be ready to drop it. As Heffernan kind of alluded to, interdependence is relationally driven, discovering leadership, gifts, and skills, and allowing people to express them. It can't be agenda driven, it's discovery driven, curiosity driven. Number 3 would be possibly my most important lesson of this year. There's no shame in having to pivot. There's no shame in creating a different plan on the fly. I mean, that needs to be done with some insight and some wisdom, but you're always pivoting toward inclusion and toward accommodation. You're pivoting toward what is going to work for as many people as possible. You're pivoting toward what's going to work for the people in front of you, and for you as well. And fourthly, I would say to follow the leader that you're trying to discover. Follow the, and I know this sounds kind of mystical, but I kind of consider myself a modern day mystic. Follow the voice that you're trying to hear. Just as we follow Christ, follow Jesus, we don't always hear clearly, but we keep following, and we take different steps, and we pivot, and we misstep, and we try again. So my last piece of learning is expect surprises, expect what you consider to be disasters. They're going to be your most fruitful learnings. It's all trial and error. And occasionally you hit a gem and you celebrate that gem. And so now I'm going to tell you a narrative, tell you a story. And then hopefully you'll see where I'm going. As I was saying, I came into this position a year ago, and the residential component is only part of what reality does. At large, reality is a community-based, faith-based program that provides programming and different interest groups, and just for a place for people with disabilities and people without disabilities to connect during their day and week. So as part of my doctorate of ministry research, my plan and my dream, and it still is my dream and part of my plan, but going back to the relational capital component, I began an interest group based on trying to develop a retreat and practicing spiritual practices. And I wanted this interest group to be what we call a blind sign up, meaning that the people, the participants that we have, I didn't need to know who was coming. And when my group started, I was teasing my supervisor that she was hazing me. Because these were some of the most interesting people I have ever met. And they were largely, the individuals were largely nonverbal, very much on the autism spectrum, had different attention spans, a lot of different characteristics, but all on the autism spectrum. And there were only 4 of us, 5 in the interest group, myself and a student intern, and then the 3 other people. And we were meeting only once a week for an hour and a half. And so I was I was challenged with number one, building relationships, figuring out what folks wanted, what they were interested in, how they viewed spirituality, what their experience of retreat had been, what their experience of God had been. And so we were all over the map in all sorts of different places. So by the they were all 3 very interested in art and cartooning and communicating with the written and drawn word. So I followed my agenda, teaching spiritual practices into the second week. And one person was in tears and two people were looking at their watches. And I'm like, this is never going to work. We have 11 weeks left. So myself and my intern collaborated and did some interdependent work, and we got into having the boys begin to draw on their iPads and begin to begin to relate to the Bible in that way, begin to relate to the text in that way, and drawing on paper. But that left one person in the group out. So, and we were losing attention span windows. So rather than structuring our schedule with a social time at the beginning and then the Bible story at the end, we shifted our schedule around. So we did content at the beginning and then a show and tell in the middle and then a social time at the end. So that was another way to accommodate. So quite honestly, by week 11 of 13 weeks, we had found our rhythm. And by week maybe 9 or 10, we had shifted our schedule, and we had discovered the blessing of a whiteboard in our room, and we focused on this stories of Noah and Jonah in the Old Testament, and we just drew very rough cartoons on the whiteboard. And it didn't matter that Noah and Noah's wife were out of proportion with the ark, and that Jonah's leafy tree melted in the sun. But what we ended up doing was doing these rough drawings with salt balloons above them with 3 story points that we wanted to get across. And we were like, what was God thinking? What was Jonah thinking? And what was Noah praying? And what was Jonah resenting? And just open-ended questions. And we got some wonderful, rewarding responses, and some very interesting ones. I do want to talk just briefly about traditional spiritual practices, because I think that that's important in the world of, well, anybody's world. It's one of my passions, but particularly in the world of people with disabilities. This has become my passion as a clergy person, because I don't believe that people with disabilities have adequate access to foundational education in faithful life. I don't think, despite my rushing in thinking I could do it, I don't think we allow adequate time for that to happen. I don't think we provide adequate, and by we, I'm saying me, I don't think that we provide adequate material and adequate time. The friend of any spiritual learning is time, and any relational learning is time. But I've often imagined what contemplative prayer and silence would look like for someone who is neurodiverse, and so we did try two practices. We did try silence, which went over really big and by really big, I'm being sarcastic. It went over really big in the first couple of weeks, and by this, and was going better by the third week. And one person expressed that silence was very calming, which I'm still thinking about. And what does that mean for someone who is on the autism spectrum, whose mind and body is always active? So what, as I said, what does that mean? And we did try centering prayer. And centering prayer is a practice where you have a centering word, and when your thoughts wander, you notice your thoughts, but the centering word brings you back to your focus point. And they were like, so I'm like, choose a word. And they're like, what kind of word? And I said, I don't know. My friend said, armadillo. And so we came up with words like pickles and ice cream and chocolate. And so what I want you to get from that part of my narrative is that when we're trying to engage spiritual things, the words that we use don't have to be what has been traditionally considered holy or theological. What you're looking for is a common ground of understanding. And if pickle or armadillo or ice cream gets you in a common place and allows you to access something spiritual or something discoverable with the individual, that you're trying to build a relationship and you're trying to help them connect with God in a way that they have not before, that's perfectly, I mean, God does not appreciate our empty worship. He appreciates an open heart and open hands, or she does. God itself does. So, again, be relationally driven and expect surprises. And so I'll end with one of the surprises, and then leave some time for questions. One of the young men in our group said that he did not know how to pray and that he didn't pray well. And so on this particular day, nobody anticipated it, but I was just trying to draw everyone into prayer. So I invited him to pray. Well, actually, another group member invited him to pray. And he was like, I don't know how to pray. so this other member of the group just went over to him and took his hand and said, "You start like this. You say, 'Dear God.'" And he just said the most beautiful spoken collect that I've ever heard. Better than any prayer that I've written. So the rewards may be few and far between, but the surprises are wonderful. So anyway, thank you for having me. Yeah.
We are open for questions. We have a few more minutes. We've got almost 10 minutes. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. If you need to orally ask your question, you can raise hand and I should be able to see that and I can allow you to speak. While you all do that, I do have their emails in the chat. That will also be in your follow-up email. Reverend McKee, I do have a question for you. So you talked to us about how you went into this with a plan that you wanted to create a retreat. Oh, thank you, Reverend Heffernan. That's also her ELCA email as well. So Reverend McKee, you talked about how you went into this planning that you wanted to kind of create a retreat curriculum created by people with disabilities, specifically people with intellectual disabilities. And, but you wanted to do it by doing a retreat for people with disabilities to do that. Now, in the process, you learned a lot about, going in with a plan and things not happening quite the same way that you had blocked out your time for. How did that one feel just as that practitioner and that preparer? But also, how did that feel as a disabled person, being like any expectations that you had for yourself, being a disabled clergy, and did that have an effect on your reflection or your feelings as well?
Well, personally, let me address the personal part first. Personally, and I'm saying this because you two ladies know me, the two ladies that I'm presenting with today know me very well. So personally, I was disappointed and frustrated and feeling like a failure. But on the other hand, I had committed this 13 weeks very early in my tenure and very unwisely, as I think on it now, very early in my tenure with this organization, and I didn't know hardly anyone. I didn't know. I knew very few of our participants. So it was a big ask of myself and a big ask of the organization.
So it sounds like it also made it,
yeah.
a part of it was getting to know the people that you're working with, then
Yeah.
allowed for those accessible opportunities and ideas, because then you knew what they liked or how they worked. Okay.
Yeah. And so I don't know what kind of time window I would suggest. because it's different with every group and every dynamic in the group. I might have been, well, I'm just now getting to the point where participants will greet me in the hall, and where I'm getting greetings from people that I have not had in a group, where I don't have in residential. People are getting used to seeing me and being around. So I'm becoming part of the fabric. So I might have extended my time, like maybe 2 years in. It might have been a good idea to do this. But I do not regret trying it this first year. Yeah.
We have a question from David Morstadt. A pastor's role, and I think this is for both of you, a pastor's role is so broad. In your experience, do people think all issues eventually lead to the theme of disability? And secondly, how willing have people been to see you as the whole and complete pastor you are?
In my experience, I don't think every issue would lead back to disability. In the past, I actually tended more to be insecure in myself about that. Of, is this an issue because of disability? So a lot of things, no. Congregational life is hard and complicated without disability as it is. And I think being a younger female clergy wrapped up in that can also be hard for some to see you fully in your role as pastor. But largely I felt and feel people have seen me in that role, or in time did.
Reverend McKee, how willing have people been to see you as the whole and complete pastor you are?
I'm gonna say yes to a lot of Heffernan's answers, but I'm also gonna say that for me, I think no, and I think it's partially cultural, both for around disability issues and the reality of being a female. I grew up in Appalachia, and still culturally being a female is difficult. So unless you're very confident and very open to conflict and standing your ground quite a bit, and then with the disability on top of that, how a lot of people, at least where I grew up and served, it's been very difficult, but very rewarding as well.
Thank you. We are at the 3 o'clock mark. If you all have any other questions, please feel free. I'm saying this, I'm offering this before they say it, but I know both of them well. So if you have any additional questions or need to run ideas or resources, all three of us are more than happy to explore that with you. I cannot speak and type at the same time. Okay, so my email is now also in the chat. Again, you all will get 2 follow-up emails from me. The first will be in the next couple of days. You all will get an email with a PDF version of the slides that you saw today. And then 2, you will also get, again, the emails of everybody here. You all will get a second email from me as soon as this recording is up on YouTube and our website. That usually takes a little bit of time as that goes into other departments here at Stonebelt. But you will get that follow-up email once that is posted and available for you all to check out. One other option is you can all check this recording out on Facebook. On Stonebelt's Facebook page. It is also recorded and will automatically be immediately available for you all as well. So that's another option. Thank you all so much for attending. It was wonderful for our presenters, and thank you all for being able to be here. Blessings to you.